Hey there, why aren't you asleep yet? The world outside can wait. Just for now, let the quiet of this moment envelop you. Allow your thoughts to soften, your breath to deepen. We're about to embark on a journey, not to a place of restless energy, but to one of ancient echoes and enduring stone. A story whispered by time itself. Tonight, we travel back to a civilization whose ambition reshaped the very earth, whose engineers dared to dream on a scale that still commands our awe. We journey to Rome, not just the city, but the idea, the empire, a colossal presence whose structures were far more than mere buildings. They were declarations, chiseled in stone and mortar, of a power and ingenuity that sought to conquer not just lands, but the very limitations of nature. We'll uncover the secrets of how a relentless ambition, forged in concrete and crowned with arches, built an empire that spanned continents, leaving an indelible mark that time has not erased. So, settle in, let your mind drift as we explore the foundations of this grandeur, the whispers of its beginnings. Our story begins not in the marble-clad heart of a colossal empire, but in humbler, more earthen tones on the Italian peninsula, long before emperors ruled the known world. Here, among the rolling hills and fertile valleys, the seeds of Roman architectural identity were sown, nurtured by the cultures that surrounded and preceded them. To understand the monumental achievements to come, we must first listen to the echoes of these early influences, particularly those of the enigmatic Etruscans and the ever-admired Greeks. The Etruscans, a vibrant civilization flourishing in Etruria, modern Tuscany, from the 8th century BCE, were Rome's early neighbors and, in many ways, its first teachers in the art of building. While much of their world remained shrouded in mystery, their architectural legacy, particularly in funerary and religious structures, left a distinct imprint. Imagine their cities, often perched on easily defensible hilltops. Their temples, unlike their Greek counterparts, were not typically designed to be admired from all sides. Instead, Etruscan temples, often built of wood and mud brick with terracotta decorations, stood on a high podium, emphasizing a strong frontal approach with a deep porch and often 3 celae, or sacred chambers dedicated to a triad of gods. This axial focus, this sense of directed entry, would become a recurring theme in Roman temple design. The Etruscans were also skilled engineers, particularly in hydraulics. They constructed cuniculi, intricate networks of underground tunnels for drainage and water supply, a practical skill. The Romans would adopt and elevate to an art form. Their tomb architecture, too, with its elaborate burial chambers, often carved to resemble the interiors of homes, speaks of a culture deeply connected to ritual and the afterlife. As Rome grew from a small city-state into a burgeoning republic. It increasingly came into contact with the sophisticated world of the Greek colonies in southern Italy, known as Magna Graecia, and later with Greece itself. The encounter was transformative. The Romans, ever pragmatic, recognized the beauty, the mathematical precision, and the philosophical depth embodied in Greek architecture. They saw in the Doric, Ionic, and Corinthian orders not just structural elements, but a visual language of harmony and proportion. Greek temples, often built of pristine marble, with their surrounding colonnades, the peripteral design, and their exquisite sculptural friezes, represented an aesthetic ideal. The Romans admired this and began to incorporate these elements. Yet, they did not simply copy. They adapted. Where the Greeks often sought pure aesthetic expression, the Romans blended it with their own inclination towards grandeur and practical application. They might use Greek orders for embellishment, but the core structure might still reflect an Etruscan emphasis on the podium and frontal access. Early Roman building materials were predominantly local. Tufa, a volcanic stone easy to quarry and carve. Perino, and later travertine, a harder limestone. Marble was a luxury, often imported, its widespread use coming later with the expansion of Roman power and wealth. The early Roman Forum, the civic heart of the Republic, would have initially been a collection of simpler structures, gradually growing in complexity. Temples, like the Temple of Jupiter, Optimus Maximus on the Capitoline Hill, though rebuilt several times, retained its Etruscan plan throughout its history, even as it was adorned with more Hellenistic features. This period, from the founding of the Republic around 509 BCE through its centuries of expansion, was a crucible. It was a time of learning, borrowing, and slowly of synthesizing. The architecture of the Republic wasn't yet the colossal statement of imperial Rome, but it was laying the vital groundwork. It was in these centuries that Roman builders mastered the arch, an element known to earlier civilizations like the Mesopotamians, but one the Romans would truly unlock for its revolutionary potential. They began to experiment with early forms of concrete, though not yet the remarkable pozzolanic concrete that would define their later masterpieces. The transition from republic to empire in the late 1st century BCE under Augustus marked a pivotal moment. Augustus famously claimed he found Rome a city of brick and left it a city of marble. This was more than a boast. It signaled a conscious decision to use architecture as a statement of power, stability, and imperial glory. The foundations, however, were already laid. An Etruscan understanding of sacred space and practical engineering, a Greek vocabulary of beauty and order, and a uniquely Roman drive to build on an ever grander scale for purposes both divine and distinctly earthly. These early centuries were the quiet inhalation before the breathtaking exhalation of imperial architectural might. The stage was being set for structures that would not just house an empire, but proclaim its enduring presence to the world. As Rome transitioned from a republic, absorbing and adapting the architectural languages of its neighbors, a profound shift was occurring beneath the surface, or rather within the very substance of its emerging structures. This was not merely about aesthetic choices or grander plans. It was an engineering revolution born from a uniquely Roman blend of practicality, ambition, and a remarkable material: concrete. This, coupled with their mastery of the arch and the dome, allowed Roman builders to transcend the limitations of earlier civilizations and erect structures of a scale, complexity, and permanence the world had never before witnessed. For centuries, grand constructions in civilizations like Mesopotamia relied heavily on mud brick, sometimes baked for greater durability, as seen in their monumental ziggurats and city walls. These were impressive feats, certainly reaching towards the heavens, but sun-dried brick remained vulnerable to the elements, and even baked brick lacked the monolithic strength for truly vast, unsupported spans. The Egyptians, with their access to abundant stone, carved mountains into temples and pyramids, a testament to immense labor and precision. But their architecture was largely trabeated, based on posts and lintels, limiting the size of interior spaces without a forest of columns. The Romans, however, unlocked the potential of opus caementitium, or Roman concrete. This wasn't concrete as we know it today. A simple mix of cement, aggregate, and water. The Roman genius lay in their discovery and use of pozzolana, a volcanic ash found in abundance near Naples. When mixed with lime, water, and aggregate, often rubble, broken pottery, or stones, pozzolana created a mortar that was exceptionally strong, durable, and, remarkably, could even set underwater. This was a game changer. Suddenly, Roman engineers were liberated from the constraints of cut stone for the core of their structures. Concrete could be poured into wooden formwork, allowing for the creation of massive, monolithic forms, walls, foundations, and even complex curves, with far greater speed and less reliance on highly skilled stonemasons for the entire bulk of the construction. It was strong in compression, and while it lacked tensile strength on its own, its versatility was unparalleled. They could build bigger, faster, and in more daring shapes than ever before. This material wasn't just a building block, it was a medium for sculpting space itself. The sun-baked bricks of Babylon, while forming impressive masses, could not compete with the sheer resilience and adaptability of Roman concrete, which could withstand the Mediterranean climate and the test of centuries with far greater success. Hand in hand with concrete came the Roman perfection and ubiquitous application of the arch, while the principle of the arch, with its voussoirs and central keystone distributing weight outwards and downwards, was known to earlier cultures, including the Mesopotamians, who used it in gateways like the famed Ishtar Gate. The Romans elevated it to an art and a science. They understood its structural efficiency, its ability to span vast openings and support immense loads without the need for cumbersome internal supports. From the arch, they developed the barrel vault, essentially an arch extended longitudinally, creating strong, fireproof ceilings for corridors and large halls. Then came the groin vault, formed by the intersection of two barrel vaults at right angles, allowing for even more complex spatial arrangements and the introduction of light from multiple directions. These vaults, often constructed with a concrete core and faced with brick or stone, became the structural backbone of countless Roman buildings. From utilitarian sewers and bridges to grand basilicas and imperial palaces. Think of the mighty aqueducts marching across the landscape on towering arcades, carrying life-giving water to Roman cities, a powerful symbol of Roman engineering prowess, entirely reliant on the strength and repetition of the arch. The ultimate expression of this structural evolution, however, was the dome. A dome is essentially an arch rotated 360 degrees around its vertical axis. While earlier, smaller domical structures existed, it was the Romans, armed with their concrete, who mastered the true hemispherical dome on a monumental scale. And the undisputed jewel in this crown is the Pantheon in Rome. Step inside the Pantheon, even today, nearly 2,000 years after its construction under Emperor Hadrian, and you cannot help but be silenced by its serene majesty. Its vast, uninterrupted interior space is capped by a coffered concrete dome, 43.3 meters in diameter, a perfect hemisphere. For over a millennium, it remained the largest dome in the world. At its apex is the oculus, a 9-meter wide opening to the sky, the sole source of light, connecting the sacred space with the heavens. The engineering brilliance here is breathtaking. The Romans lightened the load of the dome by using progressively lighter aggregate in the concrete mix as they built upwards, and by incorporating deep coffers, which not only reduced weight, but also provided elegant geometric decoration. Hidden within its thick walls are sophisticated, relieving arches and voids, channeling the immense weight of the dome safely down to its foundations. The Pantheon is not just a building. It is a universe unto itself, a testament to Roman ambition and their profound understanding of materials and structural forces. It is a space that early Mesopotamian builders, for all their skill with brick, could only have dreamed of enclosing with such breathtaking unencumbered volume. This engineering revolution manifested across the empire. Consider the Colosseum, the Flavian amphitheater. Here, arches and vaults are stacked tier upon tier, creating a structure capable of seating an estimated 50,000 to 80,000 spectators. Its elliptical form, its complex network of passages and stairways allowing for rapid entry and exit, its substructures housing gladiators and wild animals, all were made possible by the systematic application of concrete, arches, and vaults. Its facade, adorned with engaged columns of different orders on each level, Doric, Ionic, Corinthian, cleverly combined Greek aesthetic principles with Roman structural might. This was not just about individual masterpieces. It was about a mindset. Roman engineers were pragmatists, driven by a desire to solve problems, to build efficiently, and to create structures that would endure. They were systematic, developing standardized techniques and components that could be replicated across their vast territories. Their ambition was relentless, always pushing the boundaries of what was considered possible. This engineering revolution didn't just allow them to build grand temples and amphitheaters. It enabled them to construct the very infrastructure of empire. The roads, bridges, aqueducts, and harbors that connected and sustained their world, built with a solidity that ensured many would outlast the empire itself. They didn't just build structures, they engineered an epoch. With the power of concrete, the arch, and the dome firmly in their grasp, Roman ambition turned towards the very fabric of urban life. As the empire swelled, its cities became more than just collections of buildings. They evolved into complex, highly organized organisms, reflections of imperial power, centers of commerce and culture, and stages for the grand theater of Roman life. The architecture of imperial Rome, particularly in its public spaces like the Roman Forum, its grand basilicas, and its ubiquitous bath complexes, was meticulously designed not only for function, but also as a potent tool for propaganda, social cohesion, and the efficient management of a burgeoning urban population. This conscious shaping of the urban environment offers fascinating parallels and stark contrasts to earlier attempts at city planning, such as the remarkably ordered cities of the Indus Valley civilization. At the heart of any Roman city, and preeminently in Rome itself, lay the Forum, originally a marshy marketplace in the Republican era. The Roman Forum, and later the imperial fora, built by successive emperors like Augustus, Trajan, and Caesar, transformed into monumental civic centers. Imagine bustling open spaces, paved and colonnaded, surrounded by the most important religious, administrative, and commercial buildings. Here, temples dedicated to Roman gods stood shoulder to shoulder with basilicas, large aisled halls used for law courts, business transactions, and public assemblies. The Curia, or Senate House, was where the political fate of the empire was debated. Triumphal arches celebrating military victories punctuated the landscape, their surfaces alive with reliefs depicting imperial conquests and divine favor. This was architecture as communication. Every column, every statue, every inscription was intended to convey messages of Roman might, piety, and the emperor's benevolence. The sheer scale and opulence of the fora were designed to awe both citizens and visitors, reinforcing the idea of Rome as the caput mundi, the head of the world. Unlike the more organic, seemingly haphazard growth of early Mesopotamian cities, which often developed around a central temple complex and palace, but with less formalized overall planning. The Roman Forum, especially in its imperial iterations, demonstrated a more deliberate, almost theatrical arrangement of space designed for processions, public address, and the visible manifestation of power. This concern for order extended beyond the ceremonial core. While not all Roman cities were laid out on a rigid grid like the remarkably advanced cities of Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa in the Indus Valley, which, over 2 millennia earlier, featured standardized street widths, sophisticated drainage, and brick sizes. Roman surveyors and engineers often employed a rectilinear plan, especially for new colonial foundations. This typically involved 2 main intersecting thoroughfares, the Cardo and the Decumanus, dividing the city into rectangular blocks or insulae. This provided a rational framework for development, facilitating the allocation of land and the provision of services. Within these blocks, the domestic architecture of Rome was a study in contrasts. For the wealthy elite, the domus was the ideal, a single-family residence often lavishly decorated with mosaics, frescoes, and statues. Its layout typically centered on an atrium, an open-roofed courtyard that served as the main reception area, often with an impluvium beneath the compluvium. Beyond the atrium might lie a peristyle, an open garden courtyard surrounded by a colonnade, offering a private oasis of green within the bustling city. These homes were inward-looking, designed for privacy and the display of status. For the vast majority of the urban populace, however, housing was far more modest. They lived in insulae, multi-story apartment blocks, often 3 to 5 stories high, though some notoriously rose even higher. These were typically built of timber-framed brick or concrete, often poorly constructed and prone to fire and collapse. The lower floors might house shops opening onto the street, while the upper floors contained crammed apartments. Sanitation was rudimentary for many insula dwellers. Unlike the sophisticated covered drains of Harappa, waste disposal in poorer Roman districts often meant tossing refuse into the streets or relying on public latrines. These insulae, packed tightly together, underscore the immense social stratification of Roman urban life, a stark reality often masked by the grandeur of public monuments. Yet, even for the common citizen, the city offered amenities on an unprecedented scale. Chief among them, the Roman baths, or thermae. These were not simply places to get clean. They were vast social and recreational complexes integral to Roman daily life. Grand imperial baths, like the baths of Caracalla or Diocletian in Rome, were architectural marvels, covering enormous areas and capable of accommodating thousands of bathers at a time. They featured a standard sequence of rooms: the apodarium, tepidarium, and the frigidarium. Beyond bathing, these complexes often included libraries, lecture halls, gymnasia, gardens, and even food stalls. Built with soaring vaulted ceilings, vast expanses of marble, intricate mosaics, and heated by sophisticated hypocaust systems. The thermae were a testament to Roman engineering and a profound statement of imperial largesse, providing a luxurious experience accessible to varying degrees to all strata of society. They were a cornerstone of Roman social cohesion, a place where citizens from different walks of life could mingle. Beyond the monumental and the residential, Roman cities required extensive infrastructure. Roads, famously well-built and durable, connected the city to the wider empire. Aqueducts, as we've seen, supplied fresh water not just for the baths, but for public fountains and private homes. Elaborate sewer systems, like the Cloaca Maxima in Rome, carried wastewater away, contributing to public health, though their effectiveness varied across different districts. Markets provided essential goods, and amphitheaters and circuses offered public entertainment. The Roman city, therefore, was a carefully constructed entity. It was a machine for living, an engine of empire, and a canvas for imperial ideology. While the grid-like precision of Indus Valley cities, like Mohenjo-Daro, speaks to an early and remarkable grasp of urban planning focused on sanitation and order, the Roman city, particularly in its imperial guise, added layers of monumental propaganda, social engineering through public amenities, and a sheer scale of construction that reflected its global dominance. It was a place where the power of the state was made manifest in stone and concrete, shaping the lives of its inhabitants from the grandeur of the forum to the everyday routine of the baths. While the awe-inspiring temples, palaces, and forums capture the grandeur of ancient civilizations, the true pulse of daily life often beats strongest within structures built not for gods or emperors, but for the everyday needs of the people. Roman architecture, in its pragmatic genius, excelled in creating buildings that served a vast array of functional purposes, from storing grain to facilitating commerce, from ensuring public hygiene to enabling industrial production. This focus on functionality, coupled with a relentless spirit of innovation, reveals how deeply architecture was interwoven with the daily routines, social structures, and economic engines of the Roman world, building upon and often far surpassing the practical innovations of earlier cultures like the Harappans or Mesopotamians. Beyond the monumental Roman cities and towns teemed with other essential, if less celebrated, structures. Horia, or warehouses, were crucial for storing grain, olive oil, wine, and other commodities vital to the sustenance of urban populations and the army. These weren't just simple sheds. Roman horia were often sophisticated, multi-story buildings designed for security and preservation. They featured thick walls, raised floors to protect against damp and pests, and sometimes even elaborate ventilation systems. The sheer scale of some horia, like those at Ostia, Rome's port city, attests to the vast logistical operations underpinning the empire's economy. Their design, often incorporating courtyards and rows of individual cells or storage rooms accessible from corridors, prioritized efficiency and control of valuable goods. Markets, or masala, were vibrant hubs of daily commerce. Unlike the sprawling, sometimes chaotic open-air markets of many ancient cultures, Roman masala were often purpose-built, enclosed structures. Trajan's market in Rome, for instance, is a stunning example. A multi-level complex of shops and offices built into the side of the Quirinal Hill. A marvel of concrete and brick-faced construction, featuring barrel-vaulted spaces and a grand semicircular facade. These markets provided organized spaces for vendors to sell everything from foodstuffs to luxury goods, facilitating trade and social interaction. Workshops or officinae were ubiquitous, housing artisans and craftspeople producing pottery, metalwork, textiles, and countless other goods. While many were small-scale, integrated into residential insulae or domos complexes, some industries required larger, specialized facilities. For example, fulleries for cleaning and processing wool were common and featured distinct architectural arrangements with vats for soaking and treading cloth. Bakeries, with their distinctive ovens and grinding mills, were essential for feeding the urban populace. The remains of these functional buildings, often less glamorous than temples, provide invaluable insights into the Roman economy and the daily labor of its people. We've already touched upon the incredible engineering of aqueducts and baths, but Roman innovation extended to many other areas of civil engineering crucial for daily life. Their road network, famously epitomized by the saying, "All roads lead to Rome," was an unparalleled feat. Roman roads were built to last, with deep foundations, layered construction using various grades of stone and gravel, and often a paved surface of polygonal flagstones. They were designed for efficient military movement and trade, featuring milestones, bridges, and sometimes even tunnels. The durability of these roads meant that some, remarkably, are still in use today. A testament to Roman engineering foresight. Roman bridges, built with stone arches and concrete, spanned rivers and valleys, overcoming natural obstacles and connecting disparate parts of the empire. The Pont du Gard in southern France, a combined aqueduct and bridge, is a breathtaking example of their skill in merging functionality with aesthetic grace. Their harbor engineering was also highly advanced, with the construction of extensive breakwaters, jetties, and lighthouses. Like the famed Pharos of Alexandria, these facilities were vital for maritime trade, the lifeblood of the empire. Consider also the architectural responses to climate. While the inward-looking domus, with its shaded courtyards, was well suited to the Mediterranean climate, offering respite from the summer heat, Roman builders also adapted their techniques in different provincial environments. In cooler northern climates like Britain, they incorporated hypocaust heating systems, not just in baths, but also in villas, providing a level of comfort previously unknown. The selection of building materials, too, often reflected local availability and climatic considerations. Though the core principles of Roman construction, particularly the use of arches and vaults, remained consistent, this practical, innovative spirit can be contrasted with, for example, the legendary Hanging Gardens of Babylon, one of the seven wonders of the ancient world. While Mesopotamian civilizations like Babylon demonstrated sophisticated irrigation and an understanding of tiered structures, as seen in their ziggurats, the Hanging Gardens, if they existed as described, were primarily an extravagant display of royal power and horticultural artistry, a manufactured paradise. Roman functional architecture, while often grand, was fundamentally rooted in solving practical problems for a wider populace or for the efficient functioning of the state and its economy. The Harappans of the Indus Valley, with their advanced drainage systems and standardized brick sizes, showed an early genius for practical urban infrastructure. But the Romans took these concepts to an imperial scale, driven by a different set of societal and technological capabilities. Even within Roman architecture, innovation wasn't static. The development of concrete, as we discussed, was a continuous process of refinement. The techniques for constructing vaults and domes evolved over centuries. Consider the challenge of building the massive roof of a basilica or the dome of the Pantheon. These were not achieved overnight, but were the culmination of generations of experience and bold experimentation. Architecture in the Roman world was intrinsically linked to social status and daily routines. The size and decoration of one's domus, the number of slaves one possessed, the ability to frequent the Grandeur baths, all were markers of social standing. The layout of the city, with its public spaces, directed the flow of daily life. From the morning salutatio to the afternoon visit to the baths, to the evening meal. The very structure of a Roman street, with its shopfronts and apartment dwellers above, shaped daily interactions and the urban experience. Thus, the story of Roman architecture is not just one of golden eagles and marble temples. It is equally a story of the sturdy warehouse, the bustling market, the ingenious aqueduct, and the humble workshop. It is in these structures, designed for the myriad functions of a complex society, that we see the Roman genius for practicality, their drive for innovation, and the deep imprint of architecture on the rhythm of daily life across an empire. These buildings, though perhaps less sung than the Pantheon, are equally powerful echoes of a civilization that built its world with an unparalleled understanding of how form and function could serve life itself. The monumental achievements of Roman architecture, their cities of marble and concrete, their roads that stitched together an empire, it all seems so enduring, so permanent. And yet, the Roman Empire, like all great civilizations before and after it, eventually faced decline and fragmentation. Many of its magnificent structures did not survive intact, succumbing to the ravages of time, nature, and humanity. But even in their ruin, or through their rediscovery, these architectural ghosts whisper to us, offering profound lessons and leaving an indelible legacy that continues to shape our world. Understanding their fate and how we have reconnected with them is the final chapter in our journey through Rome's architectural saga. Why did so many of these seemingly indomitable structures fall into disrepair or disappear altogether? The reasons are manifold. The very materials that gave them strength could also be their undoing over vast timescales. While Roman concrete was remarkably durable, it was not invincible. Centuries of weathering, freeze-thaw cycles in colder climates, and seismic activity took their toll. More significantly, many structures became quarries for later generations. After the Western Roman Empire's collapse in the 5th century CE, the economic and social systems that maintained these vast public works crumbled. Marble cladding was stripped for new buildings or burned for lime. Bronze statues were melted down for weaponry or coinage. The iron clamps that held stone blocks together were prized and pried out, weakening the remaining structures. War and conquest, of course, played a significant role. Cities were sacked, buildings burned, and defensive walls torn down. Neglect, too, was a powerful force. Aqueducts, once meticulously maintained, fell into disrepair. Their channels choked with debris. Forums, once vibrant centers of civic life, became overgrown pastures, their stones buried beneath the layers of accumulated earth, creating what archaeologists in other regions, like Mesopotamia, refer to as tells, mounds formed by successive layers of human occupation and abandonment. In Rome itself, the once grand Forum Romanum became known as the Campo Vaccino, the cow field, a shadow of its former glory. The process of sites becoming buried varied. Pompeii and Herculaneum were famously entombed in volcanic ash and pyroclastic flows from the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 CE, a sudden catastrophe that preserved them in a unique, albeit tragic, snapshot of Roman life. In other areas, slow abandonment led to structures being gradually covered by wind-blown soil. Vegetation, or the detritus of later simpler settlements, built atop the ruins. In jungle regions, like some Roman outposts, or, more famously, Mayan cities in Mesoamerica, the relentless encroachment of nature swallowed temples and palaces whole. For centuries, many Roman ruins lay forgotten or misunderstood, their origins sometimes attributed to mythical giants or demons. The Renaissance, however, brought a renewed interest in classical antiquity. Scholars, artists, and architects began to study the surviving Roman structures. Like the Pantheon, which survived largely because it was converted into a Christian church, or the still imposing Colosseum. Figures like Brunelleschi, who famously studied the Pantheon's dome before designing the dome of Florence Cathedral, drew direct inspiration from Roman engineering and aesthetics. Architects of the Renaissance and later periods, including the neoclassical movement, looked to Roman models for principles of proportion, order, and monumentality. The language of Roman architecture, its columns, arches, domes, and decorative motifs, became deeply embedded in Western architectural tradition, visible in countless government buildings, universities, and grand homes across Europe and the Americas. Think of the U.S. Capitol building with its dome and Corinthian columns, a clear echo of Roman precedents. The true, systematic rediscovery of the Roman world, however, began with the rise of modern archaeology in the 18th and 19th centuries. Excavations at Pompeii, Herculaneum, and later in the Roman Forum itself began to peel back the layers of time, revealing lost cities and forgotten ways of life with astonishing clarity. Early archaeological methods were often crude, sometimes more akin to treasure hunting, but over time, techniques became more scientific and meticulous. Stratigraphy, the study of layers of earth and debris, allowed archaeologists to understand the sequence of occupation and destruction. The careful recording of artifacts, from grand statues to humble pottery shards, helped to piece together a more complete picture of Roman society. Modern archaeology continues to push the boundaries of our understanding. Non-invasive techniques like ground-penetrating radar, LiDAR, or magnetometry allow archaeologists to see beneath the surface without digging, identifying buried structures and planning more targeted excavations. The study of ancient DNA, isotopic analysis of human remains, and advanced material science are revealing new insights into the health, diet, origins, and technologies of the Roman people. Underwater archaeology explores sunken Roman harbors and shipwrecks, uncovering trade routes and maritime technology. The conservation and preservation of these ancient sites present enormous challenges. Exposure to the elements, pollution, mass tourism, and sometimes, sadly, ongoing conflict and looting all threaten their survival. International collaborations and dedicated organizations work tirelessly to document, stabilize, and protect these fragile remnants of the past, ensuring that future generations can also learn from and be inspired by them. What, then, is the enduring legacy of Roman architecture? It is far more than just a collection of picturesque ruins or a style to be imitated. It is a testament to the power of human ingenuity, ambition, and the ability to organize on a vast scale. Rome's mastery of concrete and the art fundamentally changed what was possible in construction, paving the way for architectural developments for millennia to come. Their approach to urban planning, even with its inherent social stratifications, provided models for rationally organized cities. Their infrastructure, roads, aqueducts, harbors, demonstrated how engineering could unite an empire and improve the quality of life. Studying Roman architecture teaches us about the relationship between power and public image, between technology and societal development, between daily life and the built environment. It reminds us that even the mightiest empires are transient, but the ideas and innovations they leave behind can resonate for centuries. The architectural ghost of Rome is not a mournful specter, but a powerful presence, a source of continued learning and inspiration, a reminder that the structures we build are not just shelters, but reflections of who we are, what we value, and what we aspire to achieve. From the foundations of the Republic to the enduring echo of its collapse and rebirth in our understanding, Rome's architectural journey is a profound lesson in how a civilization can build not just for its time, but for the ages. Now, our journey takes us to the ancient heart of China, to a civilization that expressed its deepest philosophies, not just in scrolls of ink, but in the very bones of its buildings. For thousands of years, empires rose and fell with the rhythmic construction of walls, temples, and cities that seemed to breathe with the landscape itself. This is the story of the dragon builders, whose architecture is a living philosophy in timber and tile, a serene reflection of harmony with nature, the awesome might of imperial power, and an enduring quest for balance that whispers through the ages. So, let your mind quiet itself, and let us travel back to where it all began, to the very earth from which this civilization grew. Our story does not begin with gleaming golden roofs or sprawling forbidden cities, but in the soil itself, along the fertile banks of the yellow and Yangtze rivers. Here, thousands of years ago, long before the first emperors, the fundamental principles of Chinese architecture were born from the universal human need for shelter and a unique relationship with the natural world. To understand the grand palaces and soaring pagodas to come, we must first listen to the whispers from these Neolithic roots, where the foundations of an empire were laid, quite literally, in the earth. Imagine a clearing in a Yellow River Valley, some 6,000 years ago. This is the world of the Yangshuo culture, and we find ourselves in a settlement we now call Banpo. The earliest homes here are humble, yet ingenious. They are semi-subterranean, dug partially into the ground, with a simple wooden frame supporting a thatched roof. By building into the earth, these early people used the planet itself as insulation, staying warm in the harsh winters and cool in the summer heat. A central fire pit provided warmth and a place for cooking, its smoke escaping through a hole in the roof. These simple, circular, or squarish dwellings were clustered together, often around a central community building protected by a defensive ditch. It's a design born of practicality, community, and a deep instinctual connection to the land. From these humble beginnings, a foundational technology emerged that would define Chinese construction for millennia. Hangtu, or rammed earth. The technique is beautifully simple in principle, yet immensely effective. Workers would erect wooden frames or shutters and pour in thin layers of local soil of low S, sill, and lows, a fine yellowish sill, then rhythmically pound each layer with heavy tampers. The result was a material of incredible density and durability, capable of forming massive walls, platforms, and foundations. This was not the sun-dried mud brick used to build the ziggurats and city walls of ancient Mesopotamia. While Mesopotamian bricks were individual units stacked together, rammed earth created a monolithic, seamless structure, a piece of the landscape reformed by human will. As Neolithic cultures gave way to the first dynasties, the Shang and the Zhou, around the second millennium BCE, these foundational techniques were scaled up to an imperial level. The simple defensive ditch of Banpo evolved into colossal city walls of rammed earth, some measuring dozens of feet thick at their base. Archaeologists have uncovered the remains of early Shang capitals, like Erlatu and the later city of Yin, revealing complex urban layouts. Here, the simple pit houses were replaced by large rectangular halls built atop raised hangtu platforms. These elevated foundations served a practical purpose, protecting the important wooden structures from moisture and decay. But they also served a symbolic one. They lifted the palaces and temples above the ordinary, marking them as places of power and spiritual importance. This is where the core vocabulary of traditional Chinese architecture begins to crystallize. A building was conceived not as a single, solid mass like an Egyptian pyramid, but as a system, a heavy earth platform as its base, a flexible timber frame for its structure, and a heavy ceramic tile roof to protect it. Unlike the organically grown cities of early Mesopotamia, like Eridu or Ur, which often expanded outwards from a central temple complex in a sprawling, irregular pattern. Early Chinese cities already showed a preference for order and orientation. Palatial compounds were often walled enclosures, with buildings arranged systematically along north-south axis, creating a sense of hierarchy and controlled movement through a series of courtyards. The courtyard, or Sihoan, became a fundamental organizing principle, not just for palaces, but eventually for common homes as well. It created an inward-looking world, a private sanctuary shielded from the outside, where family life and rituals could unfold in a controlled, harmonious environment. The buildings themselves were not just shelters, but carefully oriented instruments designed to be in accord with their surroundings. So, from these Neolithic roots, we see the emergence of a distinct architectural philosophy. It was one that valued the earth as its foundation, wood as its flexible skeleton, and an orderly, axial layout as its guiding principle. It was a system that could be adapted and expanded from a single family home to a vast imperial palace. These early builders, tamping the earth layer by layer, raising timber columns, and arranging courtyards in harmony with the compass, were not just creating shelters. They were creating the blueprint for an empire, establishing a tradition of construction that was deeply rooted in the soil, yet already reaching for the order of the heavens. As the foundational dynasties gave way to a new, unified epoch, the scale of Chinese architecture underwent a dramatic transformation. The localized power of kings and feudal lords, expressed in their walled cities and palatial halls, was about to be dwarfed by the vision of one man. In 221 BCE, the ruler of the state of Qin, Yingzhang, conquered his rivals and forged a single, unified empire. He declared himself Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor, and with his ascension, the very earth was reshaped by an ambition of unprecedented scale. His reign would produce two of the most staggering, monumental projects in human history, each a testament to the unparalleled organizational and engineering might of this new empire, one built to defend its borders. The first of these is the Great Wall. It is an image seared into the world's collective consciousness, an earthen and stone dragon snaking over desolate mountains and across vast plains. But the Great Wall is not a single entity built at one time. It is a concept, a system, born from the first emperor's command to connect and fortify the existing defensive walls of the former northern states. His goal was to create a formidable barrier against the nomadic Jiangnu tribes of the steppe, a clear demarcation between the settled, agricultural world of China and the nomadic lands beyond. The early wall of the Qin dynasty was not the crenellated stone structure we see in most photographs today. It was primarily a colossal undertaking in rammed earth. The hangtu technique of the ancestors now applied on a continental scale. Imagine the monumental effort. Under the command of General Meng Tian, a workforce estimated in the hundreds of thousands soldiers, conscripted peasants, and convicts toiled in harsh and often lethal conditions. They pounded the earth, layer by layer, raising a formidable barrier that stretched for thousands of miles. It was more than a simple wall. It was a sophisticated defensive system. Watchtowers were built within sight of one another, allowing for rapid communication through a system of smoke signals by day and fire by night. A message could be relayed across hundreds of miles in just a few hours, a testament to the strategic thinking behind its design. It was the very spine of the Dragon Empire, a bold line drawn upon the map of the world, a statement of both presence and separation. Yet, this colossal achievement came at an unimaginable human cost. It became known as the longest cemetery on Earth, a somber monument built on the bones of those who perished during its construction. It stands as a silent testament to the immense power of a centralized state to mobilize its population for a single, overarching purpose, a power that could command mountains to be tamed and deserts to be walled. But if the Great Wall was the outward expression of the emperor's power, built to be seen and feared by the living, his second great project was an even more stunning expression of his ambition, and it was never meant to be seen at all. Qin Shi Huang was obsessed with the pursuit of immortality. While he sent expeditions in search of elixirs of eternal life, he also prepared for the alternative, an afterlife where he would continue to rule. To this end, he commanded the construction of a vast subterranean mausoleum near the future city of Shan. For centuries, this mausoleum was the stuff of legend, described only in the ancient texts of the historian Sima Qiang, who wrote of a sprawling underground palace, a map of the empire with rivers of flowing mercury and a ceiling studded with pearls to mimic the cosmos. The tomb itself remains sealed, a tantalizing mystery. But in 1974, a group of farmers digging a well stumbled upon one of its most incredible secrets. As their tools struck something hard, they unearthed a fragment of clay, and soon, a fully formed, had a silent face staring back from the darkness of 2 millennia. What has since been excavated is breathtaking. A silent, subterranean legion, thousands strong, standing in battle formation in vast pits to the east of the Emperor's tomb mound. Here are infantrymen, archers, cavalry, and charioteers, a perfect replica of the unstoppable Qin army that had conquered China. They were meant to be the emperor's eternal guardians, protecting his soul in the afterlife. The scale is almost impossible to comprehend, but it is the detail that truly steals the mind. Each soldier is life-sized, and astonishingly, no two faces are alike. They are a portrait gallery of an empire's defenders, with distinct hairstyles, expressions, and features. A stunning fusion of mass production and individual artistry. This silent army is a profound feat of engineering and logistics, crafted through an ancient form of assembly line production. Different workshops produced the heads, torsos, arms, and legs, which were then assembled, customized by master artisans, and fired in massive kilns. Originally, they were painted in brilliant, lifelike colors: pinks, purples, reds, and blues of vibrant army that has faded to terracotta gray upon exposure to the air. The sheer organizational power required to create, assemble, and bury an army of this size, along with the untold treasures in the yet unopened tomb, is a testament to a level of centralized control and resource mobilization that rivals any civilization in history. While the pharaohs of Egypt built their pyramids as great stone stairways to the heavens, visible for miles, the first emperor built his own universe beneath the earth, a secret kingdom known only to him. The Great Wall and the Terracotta Army are two sides of the same imperial coin. One, a sprawling, pragmatic defense of the physical realm. The other, a meticulously crafted, hidden defense of the spiritual one. Both speak of a power that could command not just the earth and its people, but could attempt to command eternity itself. While monumental projects of earth and stone spoke of imperial might on a staggering scale, the soul of traditional Chinese architecture resided not in its mass, but in its bones. The defining characteristic of most temples, pagodas, palaces, and even humble homes was a sophisticated system of timber frame construction. This was a tradition that valued elegance, flexibility, and a profound understanding of natural materials. In a world where the Greeks and Romans were mastering stone to create permanence through rigidity, resulting in an architectural language utterly distinct and deeply philosophical. At the heart of this system was a simple but revolutionary idea. The walls of a building were not its primary support. Instead of load-bearing walls like those in a European stone castle or a Mesopotamian brick house, the entire weight of the massive and often ornate roof was carried by a network of timber columns. The walls were merely screens, partitions for defining space and providing privacy. They could be made of lighter materials like brick, lattice, or even paper, because the structural work was being done by the wooden skeleton. This fundamental principle gave Chinese architecture an extraordinary openness and adaptability. The true genius of this timber frame, however, lay in its joinery. In a testament to masterful carpentry, the entire framework was often assembled without the use of nails or glue. Instead, carpenters developed an intricate vocabulary of interlocking joints, relying on precision cutting, mortising techniques, and the sheer force of compression to hold the structure together. This created a framework that was not rigid but slightly flexible. In a region prone to earthquakes, this was an ingenious adaptation. The building could sway and absorb seismic shocks, distributing the energy through its flexible joints rather than cracking under the strain. It was a system designed to bend, not to break. The most sophisticated and visually stunning element of this joinery is the dugong bracket system. Look closely at the eaves of a traditional Chinese temple or palace just below the roofline, and you will see what appears to be a complex, cascading cluster of interlocking wooden blocks. This is the dugong. It served multiple, crucial purposes. Structurally, it acted as a cantilever, transferring the immense weight of the roof from the horizontal beams to the vertical columns. This allowed the eaves to curve gracefully outwards, projecting far beyond the walls to protect the timber frame from rain, while still allowing low winter sun to warm the interior. Aesthetically, the dugong provided a rich layer of rhythmic, ornamental detail, breaking up the transition between roof and column with a beautiful, flower-like complexity. The elaboration and size of the dugong sets also served as a status symbol, indicating the importance of the building and the rank of its owner. This timber frame system found its most sublime expressions in religious architecture, particularly in temples and pagodas. A traditional temple complex was not a single building, but a carefully orchestrated journey through a series of courtyards and halls arranged along a central axis. The main hall, housing the most important deities, would be the largest and most elaborately decorated structure. Its importance signaled by the complexity of its roof and its dugong brackets. The architecture was designed to foster a sense of tranquility, contemplation, and reverence, guiding the visitor through spaces of increasing importance. The pagoda is perhaps the most iconic form of Chinese religious architecture, evolving from the Indian stupa, which was brought to China with Buddhism. The pagoda was transformed into a uniquely Chinese structure. Built of wood, brick, or stone, these multi-story towers were intended to house sacred relics or scriptures. Timber pagodas, like the magnificent 11th century Fogong Temple Pagoda in Shaanxi Province, are masterpieces of the dugong system, standing over 220 feet tall. It is the oldest surviving all-wood pagoda in China, a testament to the enduring strength of its interlocking joinery. Having survived numerous earthquakes over nearly 1,000 years, its soaring height and repeating cantilevered roofs were meant to draw the eye upwards, connecting the earthly realm with the celestial. The same architectural principles govern the construction of imperial palaces, most famously culminating in the Forbidden City in Beijing. Here, the timber frame system was scaled to its most majestic proportions. Vast audience halls, like the Hall of Supreme Harmony, stand on immense marble platforms, but they're enormous. Sweeping roofs are supported entirely by massive timber columns. The vibrant colors, imperial yellow for the roof tiles, deep vermilion for the columns, were strictly regulated, part of a symbolic code that reinforced the emperor's divine status. The entire complex is a symphony of timber and tile, a city within a city, where the architectural system is repeated and elaborated to create a breathtaking landscape of power and ceremony. This reliance on wood stands in stark contrast to the great stone architectures of the West and the Near East. The stone temples of Egypt and Greece were built for eternity, their permanence rooted in the sheer weight and immutability of their material. Chinese architecture, by contrast, found its permanence in a different philosophy, one of renewal. Wooden structures were susceptible to fire and decay, but the system itself was timeless. A building could be repaired, its parts replaced, or even completely rebuilt using the same time-honored techniques. The continuity lay not in the individual piece of timber, but in the knowledge of how to build a Tay philosophy that mirrored the cyclical, regenerative view of the world found in Taoism and other Chinese traditions. It was an architecture of life, crafted from a living material, designed to harmonize with the forces of nature rather than to defy them with unyielding stone. The architectural philosophy of ancient China extended far beyond the construction of individual buildings. It scaled up to encompass the entire urban landscape, transforming cities into meticulously planned organisms designed to reflect cosmic order, imperial authority, and a deep-seated quest for harmony. This was not the pragmatic, grid-based efficiency of the Romans, designed primarily for military and commercial administration, nor the linear, processional layouts of Egyptian temple cities like Thebes, which followed the line of the Nile. Ancient Chinese urban planning was a unique synthesis of practicality and metaphysics, a conscious effort to build a microcosm of the universe on Earth, guided by the ancient principles of feng shui. Feng shui, which translates to wind and water, is a traditional philosophical system centered on the idea of living in harmony with the surrounding environment. It posits that the land is alive with energy or qi, and that the proper orientation and arrangement of buildings, graves, and even entire cities can maximize the flow of positive energy, bringing good fortune, stability, and prosperity. This was not considered superstition. It was a sacred science, an essential element of statecraft and architectural design. The ideal layout for an imperial capital city was codified in texts like the Kyogang-ji, or Book of Artificers, dating back to the Zhou dynasty. It described a perfect capital as a walled square, aligned with the cardinal directions, featuring 3 gates on each side. With a grid of 9 major north-south and 9 east-west avenues, the emperor's palace was to be situated at the heart of this grid, or just to the north, facing south, the most auspicious direction. This south-facing orientation was paramount. It placed the ruler in the position of power, looking down upon his subjects, and mirrored the traditional belief that a ruler should face the light to govern. It also had a practical climatic benefit, maximizing sunlight in winter and catching cooling breezes in summer. This idealized model found its grandest expression in cities like Chang'an, the capital of the magnificent Tang dynasty. In the 8th century, Chang'an was the largest and most populous city in the world, a bustling, cosmopolitan metropolis. Its layout was a breathtakingly rational grid. A massive outer wall of rammed earth enclosed an area of over 30 square miles. The city was divided by wide, straight avenues into 108 wards, or fang. Each ward was itself a walled compound with gates that were closed at night, allowing the imperial government an extraordinary degree of control over the populace. The imperial palace complex was located at the northern end of the central axis, facing south, while 2 enormous government-regulated markets, the East Market and the West Market, anchored the city's commercial life. The sheer orderliness of Chang'an, with its precise grid and zoned districts, was a powerful statement of imperial control and cosmic alignment. Centuries later, this tradition would culminate in the construction of Beijing and its inner sanctum, the Forbidden City, built during the Ming Dynasty. The entire city of Beijing was designed with these principles in mind. It is a city of nested enclosures, one inside the other: the outer city, the inner city, the imperial city, and at its absolute center, the Forbidden City. This progression created a series of powerful thresholds, emphasizing the separation and supreme status of the emperor. The Forbidden City itself is a masterpiece of feng shui and axial planning. A single, dominant north-south axis runs through its most important gates and ceremonial halls. From the Gate of Heavenly Peace in the south to the Hall of Supreme Harmony, the Hall of Central Harmony, and the Hall of Preserving Harmony. Before proceeding to the imperial residences in the inner court, everything was designed to reinforce the emperor's role as the Son of Heaven, the intermediary between the celestial and earthly realms. The principles of feng shui also guided the placement of the city in the landscape. Ideally, a city would be sheltered by mountains to the north, protecting it from harsh winds and evil spirits, and face open water like a river to the south, where a spacious quay could collect. Even the placement of individual buildings within a courtyard, the location of gates, and the path of walkways were meticulously considered to ensure a harmonious flow of energy. This approach to urban planning offers a fascinating contrast to other ancient models. The Roman castrum, or military camp, with its intersecting cardo and decumanus, also provided a grid. But its rationale was primarily military and administrative efficiency. While practical, it lacked the deep cosmological significance of the Chinese model. Early Mesopotamian cities, as we've noted, often grew organically. Their winding streets, a testament to centuries of unplanned development, creating a dense, labyrinthian urban fabric. The planned cities of the Indus Valley, like Mohenjo-daro, showcased an astonishingly early and sophisticated grid system with a clear focus on public sanitation. But the full extent of their symbolic or cosmic underpinnings remains a subject of study. In China, the city was more than a place to live. It was a ritual diagram. Its walls were not just for defense, but to define a sacred space. Its gates were not just openings, but symbolic portals. Its central axis was the spine of the empire, connecting the ruler to the pole star, the fixed point in the heavens around which all else revolves. The lives of its inhabitants, from the emperor in his palace to the merchant in the marketplace ward, were conducted within a framework designed to reflect and reinforce a universal, harmonious order. It was a vision of civilization where the practical and the spiritual were inseparable, where the blueprint for a city was also a map of the cosmos. The grand palaces, soaring pagodas, and meticulously planned cities of ancient China tell a story of incredible ingenuity and profound philosophical depth. But this story is a fragile one, whispered largely through structures of timber and earth. Unlike the enduring stone monuments of Egypt or Rome, the primary medium of Chinese architecture was biodegradable and susceptible to the ravages of time, fire, and human conflict. The survival of these architectural treasures into the modern era is a testament to both their resilient design and a continuous, challenging effort of preservation. Today, as we uncover more of this ancient past, the echoes of the dynastic builders offer timeless lessons about harmony, sustainability, and the spirit of a place. The greatest challenge to the legacy of traditional Chinese architecture has always been the nature of its materials. Wood, for all its flexibility and elegance, is vulnerable. The history of China is marked by devastating fires that have consumed entire temple complexes and palatial cities, which were often rebuilt, sometimes multiple times, on the same sacred foundations. The poet Du Mu, writing in the 9th century, lamented the burning of the magnificent Yipang Palace of the first emperor, a loss that symbolized the impermanence of even the grandest imperial creations. War and dynastic changes also took a heavy toll, with victorious armies often dismantling or burning the capitals of their predecessors as a symbolic act of erasure. Because of this cycle of destruction and reconstruction, very few ancient wooden buildings survive in their original form. Structures like the main hall of the Nanshan Temple, dating to the year 782, or the Fogong Temple pagoda from 1056, are exceedingly rare and precious survivals, offering us a direct physical link to the architectural genius of the Tang and Liao dynasties. They are invaluable textbooks for understanding the joinery, proportions, and craftsmanship that were perfected over a millennium ago. The preservation of these timber structures is a delicate and highly specialized science involving a constant battle against rot, insect infestation, and the structural stresses of age. It requires a deep understanding of traditional carpentry, as modern conservation techniques must be carefully balanced with the need to maintain the building's historical integrity. While the wooden superstructures are rare, the earth and stone foundations are far more numerous. Modern archaeology in China is a field of breathtaking scale and discovery. Using techniques from remote sensing and satellite imagery to meticulous excavation, archaeologists are continually expanding our knowledge. The uncovering of the Terracotta Army was just the beginning. The ongoing exploration of ancient capital cities like Yin, the last capital of the Shang dynasty, reveals the rammed earth platforms of palaces and the haunting sacrificial pits that speak of ancient rituals. The search for the first emperor's unexcavated tomb continues to fuel the global imagination. Each new discovery adds another layer to our understanding of the technological prowess and social structures of these ancient civilizations. Beyond simply preserving and excavating, there is a growing appreciation for the philosophical underpinnings of traditional Chinese architecture, the principles of harmony with nature, the thoughtful use of materials, and the emphasis on creating humane, balanced spaces are finding a powerful resonance in contemporary architectural discourse. In a world grappling with climate change and urban sprawl, the ancient wisdom of feng shui, when stripped of its more esoteric aspects, can be seen as an early form of sustainable design. The orientation of buildings to maximize sun and shade, the creation of green courtyard spaces to moderate microclimates, and the use of natural, local materials are all concepts at the forefront of modern green architecture. Contemporary Chinese architects, and indeed architects around the world, are increasingly looking to traditional forms not for direct imitation, but for inspiration. The elegant minimalism of a Ming Dynasty scholar's garden, the clever use of natural light, the seamless integration of interior and exterior space, These ideas are being reinterpreted in modern homes, public buildings, and urban parks. The legacy is not just in the curved roofs and bracket sets, but in the underlying philosophy. The idea that a building should not be an object imposed upon the landscape, but an experience that unfolds in harmony with it. The echoes of the dynastic builders teach us a different lesson than the monumental ruins of Rome. Roman architecture, with its concrete and stone, speaks of a desire to conquer nature, to impose an eternal order upon the world. Chinese architecture, in its timber bones, speaks of a desire to flow with nature, to find permanence through resilience and renewal. It is a legacy that reminds us that the most enduring structures are not always the most massive, but those that are most in tune with their environment and the human spirit. As we look at the surviving temples, walk the restored sections of the Great Wall, or marvel at the silent gaze of a terracotta soldier, we are connecting with a deep and continuous conversation about the human place in the universe. It is a conversation shaped by the earth, articulated in timber, and guided by a profound quest for balance. The ancient dragon builders may be long gone, but the spirit of their work, a quiet testament to harmony and endurance, continues to whisper to us on the wind.